Good morning. Recently when Susan and I were in New Zealand, in Auckland we went to the top of the Sky Tower. It's a 328 metre tower to the top of the mast. It's a telecommunications tower and tourism. There, at those higher levels there is restaurant and cafes and observation decks. And there's also activities you can do. You can walk around outside with ropes and everything. It offers a stunning view, 360 degrees around Auckland. The city, the harbour, the communities around, and you can see a long way. And when you read the story of it, they're very proud of this Sky Tower. From 1997, when it was built, until 2022, it was the tallest tower in the Southern Hemisphere. It's just been surpassed in 2022 by a tower in Jakarta. I think the 28th highest tower in the world. They're proud of it because in its proposal, its planning and its building, something happened to the mind of the people. It transformed them in some way, almost a coming of age. Being able to build this tower, it gave them a sense of being an international city, a tourist destination. It changed the face of the city, but changed their minds. They're proud of it in kind of a humble, simple way. It brings people in. It adds to the tourism. It is an attraction in the city, and they're proud of it. But as I read other stories of towers, such towers in the world, there are different stories. It's not always a kind of a humble pride. It's an arrogant pride in many places. In many places, these towers are built to outdo someone else's tower. So another nation, another city has got a huge tower. I'm going to build something taller to show that I'm better. And it often comes from nation states or the leaders or corporations, whatever it is, to show off. And there's this sense of power, control, might. Look at me, aren't I great? Aren't we good? Aren't we strong? Aren't we powerful? In those office towers in cities and apartments, the people who live at the top are the people with the wealth, the power. And they look down upon the others. There's this sense of power and control over this city. It's fiction, but they have this sense of godlike status. As I was looking at these stories in this tower, I thought of the story for this week, one of the stories. It's that so-called Tower of Babel, that story that happens in the primeval history of the Hebrew scriptures, in those first early chapters of Genesis, before the story of Abraham begins. It's a story of human beings in the world, of the chaos and the envy and the jealousy and the violence entering into human life. And this story of the Tower of Babel is a story of people in one place, one mind, one voice, one story, building a city and a tower into the heavens so that they can become like God. It's this aim, this desire to be godlike, be in control, powerful, mighty, whatever. And so they start building. And then the story switches to the heavenly council where God speaks and says, look at those humans gathered around one mind, one voice. When they do that, they're capable of great things for good or evil. Let's confuse their languages and create different languages and disperse them across the earth so they won't do this. I don't know what the original hearers and people through the history have seen it. Sometimes it's seen as an explanation of different cultures and languages. But it happens in the chapters before as well, where different groups move out and develop their own language, their own way. I think it's a story of diversity, of how diversity in life in the world creates a different way of being and living. It's about us together, living together, rather than getting behind that one voice of power and control and might and being godlike. It's about being open to the wonder of the world, of each other, and of listening, of diversity, of different experience and opinion and ideas, and sharing them together. I think for us it's a story of this world. It speaks into the world around us. People like Donald Trump build their own towers, Trump Tower, and golf courses and other edifices, and all in the name of Trump, to promote him. In America, the people are expected to unite behind this one voice, this one narrative, this one lot of fiction and untruth. This story that Donald Trump tells. They're supposed to accept it, believe it, think it, despite it being nonsense and violent and abusive and exclusive. And those who differ from him, who dare to question him or his ideas or his thoughts or his words, he tries to silence, where the media can be excluded or people deported or lose their jobs or whatever it is. His ways, though violent and destructive for many people, pale before the likes of Putin, who has people, dissenting voices, imprisoned or killed. He sends agents out into the world to poison and kill people who are against him. He controls the media and the story in a much more powerful way than Donald Trump. And people like Kim Jong-un or Xi Jinping, who control the media and the stories that their people hear, so that there is only one voice, their voice, and it's controlling, and people are kept in line, and people must almost worship these leaders as godlike. And that's dangerous. And this story of Babel speaks of the spreading of language and culture and ideas and diversity of people. And there's a second story this week. This week is Sunday is the day of Pentecost. And in the life of the church, that has a significance because it was on the first Pentecost, the celebration of this Festival of Pentecost, after the Passover where Jesus was crucified and died. And then the disciples experienced this mystery of resurrection. The disciples are gathered together in a room, according to Luke's story. They're waiting, they're praying, they're reading scriptures, they're waiting together for this Spirit of God to come as Jesus promised, and the new thing that God will do. And as they're waiting and praying in this room, a sound like rushing wind fills the room. And something like tongues of fire descend on the followers. And they're filled with this ecstatic joy and wonder and love. They're filled with this life, this Spirit of God. And they began to speak, to share their experience, the story of Jesus that has brought them together in all the languages of the world that they know, all the languages of the people gathered, the pilgrims gathered in Jerusalem for this festival. They speak and they hear this story of love in their own language. And many, out of their own searching and brokenness and need, hear this story that is inclusive and liberating and hopeful and loving and just. They follow. But others hear it as mere babbling and accuse them of being drunk. There's adversity as well. And Peter, who on that night when Jesus was arrested, and through that night when he was tried, that night before he was crucified, Peter denies knowing Jesus out of fear. He's scared, he's afraid. And the disciples who gather in a room, upper room that's locked and closed off from the world after that crucifixion, even through this experience of resurrection. This Peter, who was afraid and uncertain, speaks out with boldness and courage and shares this story of love and life and hope and inclusion, this story of liberation. It's not a story of power and control, except the power of love, which is vulnerable and in which comes to all people and lifts them up. Not to be God-like, except in that they might be loving and just and peaceful and peacemaking, that they might love their neighbour and love one another and include each other. In that sense, it's God-like. But it's not about power and might and control. It's about liberation and life and hope. And he speaks, and he uses even their prophet Joel, and who prophesies that in the last days God will send God's Spirit upon the people, and the young and old will dream dreams and see visions, and there'll be this new life and flourishing. And that's what Peter speaks of. And that's what this day of Pentecost represents. This ancient festival in the Jewish culture of Shavuot, which celebrated the law giving on Sinai, or the harvest festival, the bounty of God. This day celebrated this Spirit coming upon people, upon ordinary people, lowly people, to give them life and hope and a story for the world. A story that went out in diversity, of shared experience and life, of God not drawing people under one voice, one control, but liberating them to experience love and to share love where they are, to serve one another and care for the poor and the needy, and bring people into this community of love. But this story has been used in that way of control and power. Too often in the life of the church, the story has become a controlling one, controlling people's lives. It's become violent and exclusive and abusive. It's been used in horrible ways. But that's not the true story. And I think in both of these stories this week, we hear a story of love, a story of diversity, a story of being drawn together, not about the one voice that controls us and seeks to be powerful and controlling and mighty, but a story of love which liberates and lifts everyone up, which shares the story of all people being equal as children of God, beloved and given life. And I think this is the beautiful story of Pentecost. And when it's shared, when this story of God's love is shared, when people are drawn into this community that's inclusive, just and peaceful, there's beauty in the world and there's transformation. Will you celebrate this way and live into this life that God offers? Amen.